All right, so today we're diving into something a little different.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going deep on just a single source this time.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a letter from 1940,
Okay.
written by a guy named Gaetano Mauro
Mm-hmm.
to his religious community.
Right.
And, at first glance, you might think
Yeah.
a letter from almost a century ago.
Right.
How could that possibly be relevant
Yeah.
to me today?
Exactly.
But stick with us on this one.
Yeah.
Because this letter,
Yeah.
it's not just about religious life.
Okay.
It's really a blueprint for how to deal with disagreements
Mm-hmm.
and how to build unity.
Right.
And that's something that we all struggle with.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Even today,
Mm-hmm.
in today's world.
For sure. What's really striking to me
Yeah.
is how the reflection on this letter
Right.
really emphasizes its relevance.
Yeah.
Even today.
Yeah.
It's like Don Gaetano
Mm-hmm.
tapped into some timeless truths about human nature and about the challenges of community.
Exactly. And speaking of community,
Yeah.
the source material mentions that his community
Mm-hmm.
was actually expanding
Right.
at the time that he wrote this.
Yeah.
So what kind of challenges did that kind of growth pose to the community?
As the community grows,
Yeah.
it's harder to stay unified.
Right.
And Don Gaetano really saw this firsthand, and understood that differences in opinion,
Right.
personalities, different approaches
Of course.
were bound to create friction.
Yeah.
He even quotes Christ's prayer for unity,
Oh, wow.
Father, let them be one, to
Mm.
really emphasize how important spiritual unity is,
Right.
not just for his community,
Mm.
but for any group that's
Yeah.
trying to work together.
Right.
But he didn't just call for unity.
Sure.
He gave practical advice
Okay.
on how to achieve it,
Oh.
even when there are disagreements. And that's where I think his wisdom really shines through.
Okay, so how did he suggest people actually handle these disagreements?
Yeah.
Because it's inevitable that they're going to come up.
Yeah.
So was it all about like avoiding conflict?
No, not at all.
No.
He acknowledged that disagreements
Yeah.
are just a natural part of life.
Right.
He even suggested that if you try to suppress them completely,
Yeah.
it can actually be detrimental.
Really?
Yeah. But what he really emphasized
Okay.
was the spirit in
Yeah.
which you handle these disagreements.
Right.
And a lot of it boils down to humility.
Okay.
He saw pride and ego
Yeah.
as the root
Oh,
of
yeah.
so many conflicts.
It's so easy to get caught up
Exact.
in being right
Yeah,
and miss the bigger picture.
totally. And Don Gaetano really encourages kind of a radical shift in perspective.
Right.
Instead of trying to win an argument
Right.
or prove your point,
Mm-hmm.
he suggests that you take a step back and look at your own heart. He even advises responding to criticism,
Yeah.
even if you think it's unfair,
Wow.
with silence and reflection.
Okay.
And he connects this to Christ's teachings on forgiveness
Wow.
and,
Yeah.
demonstrates how to apply faith
Yeah.
to these everyday challenges.
So it's about choosing to understand rather than being right,
Exactly.
which has got to be tough,
It is.
especially when emotions are running high.
Yeah.
So does he give any advice
He does.
on how to actually do that?
He encourages approaching disagreements
Yeah.
with gentleness,
Okay.
not aggression.
Mhm.
He even advises seeking divine guidance
Oh, wow.
through prayer.
Okay.
Essentially, what he's saying is
Yeah.
go into these situations
Right.
wanting to understand the other person's perspective, not just trying to bulldoze your own point across.
There's so much wisdom packed into that.
Yeah.
It reminds me of how we often approach disagreements today.
I know, right?
We're just ready to argue.
Yeah. Not really listen.
Totally.
So,
And he also emphasizes this idea of
yeah.
recognizing and respecting expertise.
Okay.
So if someone has more experience or
Yeah.
knowledge in a particular area,
Right.
be open to deferring to their judgment.
Okay.
And he cautions against prolonging these disputes.
Right.
He emphasizes addressing issues
Yeah.
promptly and directly
Right.
instead of letting them
Yeah.
fester and become bigger problems.
It's almost like a
It is like a...
mini guide
Yeah.
to conflict resolution
Yeah.
hidden within this letter
Yeah.
in 1940.
Right.
That's really cool. So did Don Gaetano offer any other practical advice?
He did.
Yeah.
For how to navigate these disagreements. One interesting point that he brings up
Okay.
is this idea of good zeal.
Okay.
So he believed that disagreement,
Mhm.
when approached with the right intentions,
Okay.
could actually be a good thing.
Interesting.
Yeah, it could be a catalyst for growth.
Mm-hmm. And positive change within the community.
Okay.
But he distinguished that good zeal
Right.
from what he called bad zeal,
Okay.
which was basically just ego-driven argumentation,
Gotcha.
where you're focused on winning
Yeah.
rather than on truth or understanding.
I like that distinction between good zeal and bad zeal.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder
Did
to
it?
check our motivations
Totally.
before we just dive headfirst
Which
into a disagreement.
Yeah.
So what are some of the signs
Well,
that we might be operating from a place of bad zeal?
he highlights a couple of red flags.
Okay.
One is being overly attached to your own opinion.
Yeah.
To the point that you're not even willing
Right.
to consider other viewpoints.
Right.
Another is using harsh or judgmental language.
Okay.
He emphasized speaking the truth,
Mm-hmm.
but always with charity and respect.
That's a powerful reminder,
Yeah,
especially in today's world,
it is.
where like online debates
Right.
often devolves into personal attacks. It's so easy to just
It
go
does.
there.
Yeah.
Don Gaetano clearly put a lot of thought into this,
He did.
which makes me curious
Yeah.
about, the foundation of his thinking.
Right.
The reflection actually mentions some theological roots
It does.
to his ideas.
Mhm.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Don Gaetano wasn't just offering his own personal opinions.
Oh.
He was grounding his advice in Scripture.
Right.
He frequently referenced Bible verses
Right.
about humility and unity, particularly Philippians 2:3-4,
Okay.
which talks about considering others
Yeah.
more important than yourself,
Yeah.
and John 17:21,
Okay.
where Jesus prays for his followers to be one,
Mm-hmm.
just as he and the Father are one.
Those are powerful verses.
They are.
It's so interesting how he connects
It is.
these theological concepts
Yeah.
to very practical advice
Right.
about how to handle disagreements.
Yeah.
That's one of the key takeaways here.
Yeah, for sure.
He wasn't just talking about these abstract ideals.
Right.
He was offering a roadmap
Yeah.
for how to live them out
Yeah.
in the real world,
Totally.
in the messy reality
Yes.
of human relationships.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how a letter from 80 years ago
I know.
can still offer
Right.
such relevant guidance.
Yeah.
I'm already starting to see how I can apply
Yeah.
some of these principles
Yeah.
to my own life.
I think that's the beauty of Don Gaetano's message.
Yeah.
It transcends time and context.
Right.
Because it speaks to these fundamental truths
Yeah.
about human nature and our longing for unity
Yeah.
and connection.
Absolutely.
And what makes his advice even more compelling
Yeah.
is the context.
Right.
1940,
Mhm.
World War II is raging.
Oh, yeah.
Anxiety is high.
Yeah.
And here's this guy,
Oh,
Don
yeah.
Gaetano, urging his community
Yeah.
to prioritize
Yeah.
unity and understanding.
It's like he's saying that these values
Exactly.
become even more important
Yes.
during times of turmoil.
Totally.
Like if we can hold on to humility and forgiveness when things are tough,
Yeah.
maybe that's the key to not just surviving,
Right.
but thriving
Absolutely.
as individuals and as a community.
And while Don Gaetano was writing to a specific religious community,
Right.
his message has implications for everyone.
Yeah.
The reflection mentions that
Yeah.
it's not limited to people of faith.
Right.
These principles of humility, forgiveness,
Yeah.
and understanding are valuable for
Yeah.
anyone who wants to have stronger relationships, more fulfilling relationships,
Well-
whether it's in their family
No.
or their workplace
Mhm.
or even just in society as a whole.
It makes you wonder how applying these principles could help
Yeah.
to bridge some of the divides that we see
Totally.
in the world today.
Yeah.
We're so quick to judge
We are.
and dismiss people who have different views than us.
Yeah.
So do you think Don Gaetano's advice could be applied?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
In fact, I think his message is even more relevant
Okay.
in our hyper-connected
Mm.
but increasingly polarized world.
Right.
Just think about online discussions.
Oh, yeah.
They often just turn into shouting matches.
Yeah. Right.
There's no room for real dialogue.
Yeah.
But what if we approach these interactions with the humility and gentleness
Right.
that Don Gaetano talks about?
Yeah.
What if we actually try to understand the perspectives
Yeah.
of those that we disagree with,
Even if we find their views challenging.
even if their views are challenging?
It's a radical idea.
It is.
But I can see how it would completely change the tone
Totally.
of the conversation.
Yeah.
It would shift it from like a battle of egos to like a genuine search for common ground.
Exactly.
I'm also
No.
thinking about Don Gaetano's advice
Yeah.
to respect expertise, which in today's world,
Right.
where everyone has a platform
Yeah.
and misinformation spreads so easily,
I know.
it can be hard to know who to trust.
It really can.
You know?
And Don Gaetano's advice about respecting expertise
Yeah.
wasn't about blindly following authority.
Right.
It was about recognizing that some people
Yeah.
have spent their lives
Right.
studying certain subjects.
Yeah.
And their insights are valuable.
They do know what they're talking about.
They do.
Right.
So in today's world, that could mean
Yeah.
evaluating your sources.
Right.
Looking for credible information and being willing to learn
Yeah.
from people who have more knowledge
Yeah.
than you do in a particular field.
It's like a call to be discerning.
It is.
Information consumers.
Yeah.
Not just passive absorbers of
Excellent.
whatever we come across.
And that ties back to humility.
Okay.
It takes humility to admit that we don't know everything,
Right.
that we might be wrong, and that there's always more to learn.
It's so easy to get stuck
It is.
in our own echo chambers,
Yeah.
surrounded by people who agree with us.
Right.
It seems like Don Gaetano is encouraging us
He is.
to break out of those bubbles
Yeah.
and actively seek out
Yes.
diverse perspectives.
He recognized that encountering different viewpoints,
Yeah.
even ones that challenge your own, is essential for growth.
Right.
It helps us refine our own thinking,
Yeah.
identify our blind spots,
Yeah.
and develop a more nuanced understanding
Really?
of complex issues.
A letter from 1940
I know, it's crazy.
feeling so relevant
Yeah,
to the challenges that we face
right.
in the 21st century.
It really speaks to the timelessness of his message.
It does. And there's another aspect of his advice
Yep.
that I think is worth highlighting.
Yeah, what's that?
And that's his emphasis on action.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't just want people to passively absorb these principles.
Yeah.
He wanted them to live them out.
Exactly. He believed that true unity comes from action,
Okay.
through acts of service, kindness,
Yeah.
and forgiveness.
So it's not enough to just understand these ideas.
No.
We have to actually put them into practice.
Right. And he believed that his community should move beyond just words
Right.
and demonstrate their commitment to unity through their actions.
But I imagine that's easier said than done.
It is.
We can talk all day about unity and forgiveness, but
Yeah.
actually living those principles out in our daily lives requires effort.
It does.
Right.
Real effort. And that's why Don Gaetano gave such practical guidance.
Yeah.
He wasn't just preaching.
Right.
He was giving them tools
Yeah.
to navigate the messiness
Right.
of human relationships.
That's what makes this letter so compelling.
I agree.
It's both inspiring
Yeah.
and practical.
Yeah.
It gives us something to aspire to
Right.
and a roadmap for how to get there.
And what I find especially inspiring is that he offered this guidance
Yeah.
during a time of global turmoil.
Right.
It reminds us that even when things are chaotic and uncertain, we can choose to embody these values
Yes.
of unity, humility,
Yeah.
and forgiveness.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this.
Okay.
If Don Gaetano were alive today,
Yeah.
observing the world,
Right.
what do you think he would emphasize?
Mm.
What specific advice do you think he would give?
That's a fascinating question.
Yeah.
I think he would probably reiterate a lot of his core principles,
Right.
but tailor them
Yeah.
to address the unique challenges
Right.
that we face today.
Like what?
Well, for example, he might talk about
Okay.
the importance of mindful communication
Okay.
in the digital age,
Right.
especially on social media,
Right.
where it's so easy
It is.
to just fire off a tweet or a comment
Yeah.
without thinking about the impact of our words.
It seems like his advice
Yeah.
about responding to criticism with silence and reflection
Right.
could be particularly relevant
It could.
when it comes to online debates.
Yeah,
It's so easy to get caught up
it is.
in the heat of the moment
Yeah.
and just react defensively.
Right.
But what if instead
Yeah.
we paused
Mm-hmm.
and considered the other person's perspective
Right.
and responded thoughtfully
Yeah.
and with grace?
I think that would be a game changer.
It would.
Yeah, it would transform online discourse from,
Yeah.
this battleground
Right.
into a space for real dialogue
Right.
and understanding.
And that ties back to his point about
It does.
seeking good zeal,
Yes.
that desire for truth and understanding rather than bad zeal.
Right.
Which is driven by pride
Yeah.
and the need to be right.
Exactly.
Right.
And I think he would also emphasize, the importance of cultivating empathy.
Okay.
In a world that feels increasingly divided,
Right.
it's so important to remember
It is.
that we're all human.
Right.
We all have our own stories, our own struggles, and our own perspectives. Taking the time to understand those perspectives, even if we don't agree with them, is essential for building bridges and fostering a sense of shared humanity.
It's so easy to forget about our shared humanity.
Yeah.
When we get caught up in the whirlwind of daily life or, you know, the intensity of online debates.
Totally. And I think Don Gaetano would also remind us that embodying these principles is not a one-time thing.
Right.
It's a lifelong practice.
Okay.
It's about constantly striving to be more humble, more forgiving, more understanding in our interactions with others.
It's a journey.
It is.
Not a destination.
Exactly. And it's a journey that requires intentionality and effort and a willingness to embrace the messiness of human relationships. But it's a journey worth taking because it leads to a more peaceful and fulfilling and connected life.
Absolutely. It's amazing how these principles
I know.
from all those years ago still resonates so strongly today.
Right.
Makes you think, doesn't it?
It does.
Like if we each took just one piece of Don Gaetano's advice to heart, imagine what kind of impact that could have.
It's a powerful thought.
It is.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the state of the world, all the division and conflict.
Right.
But Don Gaetano reminds us that change starts with the individual, with each of us making that conscious choice to be more humble, and practice forgiveness, and to approach disagreements, wanting to understand.
Right. It's a call to action, isn't it?
It is.
It's not enough to just admire these principles.
Yeah.
We have to live them.
Yeah, we have to embody them.
Yeah, and that's challenging.
It is.
It requires us to confront our own egos, our own biases, our tendency to be defensive.
Totally. But the rewards are huge.
Yeah, they are.
When we approach our relationships this way, it opens us up to deeper connection, to more understanding, and to more fulfilling interactions.
And imagine if we could extend that approach beyond just our personal relationships to our communities.
Exactly.
And even to the global stage.
That's a vision worth striving for.
It is. It makes you wonder if we were all writing our own letters to the future.
Right.
Passing on advice for how to deal with disagreements.
Yeah.
How to build unity.
Right.
What would we say?
That's a great question.
What advice would we give based on our own experiences
Right.
and the challenges of our time?
What insights have we learned from Don Gaetano that we could carry forward? What challenges do we face today that might need some fresh perspectives or different approaches?
It's like an invitation to keep this conversation going.
Yeah.
To reflect on these principles and find ways to apply them in our own lives.
In our own unique context.
Maybe that's the most important thing that we can take away from this deep dive.
Yeah, I think so.
Don Gaetano's letter. It's not just some old document.
Right.
It's a living example of the power of unity, humility, and forgiveness.
It reminds us that these principles aren't just ideals. They're tools that we can use to build a better world.
And we can do that
Yeah.
one interaction at a time.
Beautifully put.
And on that note,
Yeah.
I think we'll wrap up our deep dive
Okay.
into Don Gaetano's timeless wisdom.
All right.
We hope you found this exploration thought-provoking,
Yeah.
maybe even a little inspiring.
Yeah.
And until next time,
Yes.
keep seeking, keep learning,
Right.
and keep building those bridges of understanding
Yeah.
that connect us all.